Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed that part 1 of Wolverine vs Giyu from Demon Slayer. I really enjoyed working on it, and if you're curious to stick around, I'm about to go through my process on how I animated it from start to finish, so you can see the steps I took and possibly apply it to your own process. In this video, I'll cover everything from the planning stage, storyboarding, the animating, even 2D effects, all the way up to the compositing at the very end. Before I start, I just wanted to give a quick overview of the action figures I used for my animation. First is a SH Figuarts Giyu from the Demon Slayer line with a cloth cape added. The Wolverine I'm using is the CT Toys Wolverine, which is a knockoff of the Mafex Wolverine. The first step in animation, regardless of the medium, is planning. This part is often overlooked, and I myself tend to gloss over this step when I just want to get to animating, but I find that soon after starting, if I haven't planned anything, I tend to get lost, not knowing what to do next. Even if the animation is something like a mindless battle, the bare minimum I try to do is have the beginning and end planned out in my head. For a more structured and organized process, storyboarding is the best way to plan a sequence and make things easier for myself in the long run. My storyboards were extremely rough, focusing on getting the idea drawn as quickly and clearly as possible. This helped me think about how I wanted the fight to go and imagine different possible angles, moves, and moments in the sequence. In the end, I actually strayed quite a bit from my boards because during my animation process I changed my mind on some things. In that case, I would say the boards were still useful in getting out an initial idea and served as a base for me to work from and improve upon. The software used to animate is Stop Motion Studio Pro. I used it on my computer or tablet with my phone as a remote camera on a tripod. I shot at a frame rate of 12 frames per second. I won't get into the specific settings I use because I'm still fine-tuning my process, but once I have it fine-tuned, I'll make sure to include it in a video in the future. Before jumping into my scene, I set up a very simple backdrop. I used some rocks that I had from my old aquariums and a large canvas from an old painting as a background. Keeping the background as simple as possible helped me focus on the animation, and I was mostly just concerned with hiding my cluttered, unfinished basement, as well as avoiding any visual distractions. This also helps a lot when it comes to masking out animation rigs, but I'll elaborate on that step later on. Next, I took my action figures and messed around with them, attempting to replicate the poses I drew in my storyboards, as well as feeling out the limitations of their posing. I wanted to feel out the articulation and make sure that I'd be able to move joints smoothly to achieve subtle and fluid animation. During this step, I found certain strengths and weaknesses to both figures I used. My Wolverine figure had really tight shoulder joints. That means it would be really difficult to get subtle animation out of the shoulder joints. Having a cloth cape on the Giyu figure is really nice, however, it meant I had to be extra mindful of it while animating. If I wasn't careful, the cape would just be flapping everywhere and would look terrible in motion. With the strengths and weaknesses of my figures in mind, I could finally start animating. I do have experience as a 2D animator and have played around with stop motion before, so I have a decent grasp of animation principles, but no matter how experienced I am, I made sure to reference plenty of other animation and live action work. If you're a beginner, I would advise you to try to mimic an animation or film clip with your stop motion, paying attention to the timing and posing in the scene. If there are any specific animation questions or certain animation principles you guys are confused with, let me know in the comments and I'll try to include it in a future video. I went through my storyboard and animated my shots mostly in order, but as I mentioned before, I did stray from my boards and came up with some different choreography than what I initially had planned. I also went back and added, removed, or reshot some scenes based on what I thought would look better or make the sequence flow more smoothly. I made sure to get feedback from my friends, and having some fresh eyes allowed me to find mistakes and room for improvement where I otherwise would overlook. A few shots required up to 3 or 4 reshoots, where I either made a mistake like bumping into the tripod, or I finished the shot but I just wasn't happy with it. Animation will never be an easy process. After I finished all the shooting, I wanted to add some special effects to bring some flashiness to the animation. Being someone with a 2D animation background, I thought it would be perfect for me to add the water breathing effects from Demon Slayer to the final slash that Giyu does in the sequence. I went through many Demon Slayer scenes from the anime and found clips of the water effects that I gathered for reference. I took some time to study the way the water is drawn in the anime in order to try to apply it to my own scenes. I did my best to stay faithful to the anime and drew the effects directly onto my stop motion clips. This was a very time-consuming process because I wanted to mimic the highly detailed and expertly drawn scenes done in the show. The software I use for 2D animation is Clip Studio Paint EX. Keep in mind this effect step is entirely optional and just something I wanted to add since I have experience in 2D. If you've never done 2D animation before, I wouldn't advise you purchasing any software for this. At most, I would say to use the trial period to get familiar and see if it's something you'd actually want to commit to. For scenes where a character needs to be suspended in the air, I had to build a stop motion rig in order to support them. After the scene is shot, the rig then has to be masked out. I masked out the rig as best as I could, though I don't think I've mastered this process because you can see some smudges and mistakes if you pause the video and looked really closely. Other than masking out the rig, I also do some additional color correcting, adjustment layers, blurring, and adding the 2D effects on top of everything and making sure it lines up. I also did some more 2D effects animation for the clips where the metals clash together, bringing some more life to the fight. Then I put all the scenes together and I watched it about 100 times, just admiring all the work I put in. I hope that was useful in some way or at least interesting to see the process. As someone who loves to collect action figures, I like to get the most out of my collection as possible, and I believe that bringing my figures to life with stop motion is the most fun and creative way for me to enjoy my hobby. If you're interested in learning stop motion animation, I plan on making actual tutorials on specific aspects of the process. For now, this was just a general overview as well as a proof of concept for me to learn the pipeline that I want to apply to my animation. Let me know what aspects of stop motion you want to learn about and would want a tutorial of. Like the video and subscribe to see more. Thanks for watching.